Chapter 1638. If you want to save your good friend, come to the unfinished building in the northern suburbs alone. If you dare to bring one more person, I will push them down to their deaths in front of you. With that, before Gu Mingming could reply, the call was cut off. When Gu Mingming called back, it was a reminder that the phone was switched off. Gu Mingming panicked. She looked at Snake and Gregory, not knowing what to do. This is kidnapping, we can report it to the police. Snake replied calmly. Gu Mingming shook her head and said with a sobbing tone, "Didn't you hear what she said just now? If one more person goes, she will push Bailan down." Snake held Gu Mingming's shoulders with both hands and said, "Don't panic, Gregory and I will go with you. We will definitely help you save Bailan." But she said, "Are the two of us humans?" Snake smiled devilishly and asked Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming choked. She looked at Snake and then at Gregory and shook her head. A snake, a bird, not human, they were not human. "So we can go." Snake hugged Gu Mingming and said, "Don't worry, don't be afraid. We said we won't let you cry again, so we won't let you cry again." Gu Mingming was comforted by Snake's hug. She nodded and felt more at ease. Snake placed her back in the car and went straight to the unfinished building in the northern city. The unfinished building in the north city was originally meant to be a villa, but who knew that halfway through the construction, the boss lost all his money in gambling and ran away. The building was left unfinished. Usually, many drug addicts would gather here to have a good time, and those delinquents who thought they were cool and awesome would often gather here to fight or have sex. Anyway, this was the most filthy place in S City. Children from decent families would not come here. And it was naturally Gu Mingming's first time stepping into such a place. It was just evening and it was not the time for those people to move around. The walls of this dilapidated villa were filled with non-mainstream graffiti such as skulls. Burnt petrol barrels, cigarette butts and condoms were the main rubbish here. Snake parked the car outside the unfinished building. He did not let Gu Mingming enter directly but gave Gregory a look. Gregory understood and shrugged his shoulders, transforming into a bird and flying into the night sky against the sunset glow. At a sufficient height, nothing in the unfinished building could escape Gregory's eyes. He circled around once and locked onto a location. He flew back to Mingming's side and said, "In that building I saw the shoes that Zhang Jinqing wore today. There's smoke coming from the 4th floor, but it doesn't seem like a bonfire because it's very thin and faint." "Alright, then I'm going in." Snake smiled and said, "Tuming, who are you going to call to help you later?" Gu Mingming pushed Snake and said, "Bailan is still inside, I'm not in the mood to joke around." Snake hooked Gu Mingming's chin and said, "I'm not joking either. I admit that I lost to Elvis, but if you dare to be the last to call me, I will eat them." Gu Mingming was really speechless. She could only nod and say, alright, I got it. I'm going in first." Snake leaned against the car door and waved his hand saying, "Go on, Pikachu." Chapter 1639. According to the coordinates given by Gregory, Gu Mingming accurately found where Bailan and the rest were. Looking up, she saw a vulture hovering above her head at a height of 6,000 meters. She did not even need to think to know who it was. Gregory's speed was extremely fast, and he would only need about 4 seconds to dive down. That meant that if she was pushed down from the 4th floor, Gregory would be able to catch her before she hit the ground from a height of 6,000 meters. So, what was there to be afraid of? Gu Mingming hummed a tune as she walked step by step to the bottom of the villa. The shape of the walls had already been completed, but it was still rough. There were no windows or doors and there were no handrails for the stairs. It looked tattered, and it was hard to imagine that this was originally a high-end residential area targeted at the wealthiest people. There were no obstructions along the way to the 4th floor, but having lived in the beast world for so many years, Gu Mingming still had some of the sharp senses of an orc. Of course, it was not as sharp as Elvis, Leah and Snake, but she still had the basic ability to sense things. There seemed to be 5 or 6 people lying in ambush around the villa. From the moment she entered the villa, they quietly followed behind her. When she went up to the 2nd floor, one of the 5 or 6 people stayed behind to guard the door, probably to keep a lookout, while the rest followed her upstairs. Obviously, they were afraid that she would run away, and were prepared to surround her. TSK, they really had no sense of danger, unable to differentiate who was the hunter and who was the prey. Gu Mingming pretended that she did not notice them, and continued humming a tune as she walked up the stairs. The people lying in ambush also felt that Gu Mingming's state was not right at first, but after a closer look, she really came alone. The man who sent her here was standing by the roadside, and did not enter the estate with her at all. So they analyzed Gu Mingming's humming posture as she walked up the stairs to boost her courage, pretending to be calm and acting mysterious. When she reached the fourth floor, she saw Bailan and Zhang Jinqing tied to a folding chair back to back. Their arms were tied together, and it was impossible for them to help each other untie the ropes. Both of their legs were tied to the legs of the chair, and the edges of the ropes were stained with blood, showing how tightly they were tied. Two people who couldn't move were suspended in the air by iron chains. The chains swayed slightly and made a sharp and ear-piercing sound. Gu Mingming frowned and her heart twitched. When she first went to the beast world, she felt that the sharp claws and fangs of the orcs were too scary, but when she returned to the modern world she understood. When humans are ruthless, they are much scarier than ferocious beasts. Gu Mingming. Bailan's face was covered in blood and she could not open her eyes. She could vaguely make out a figure and called out in a weak voice. Gu Mingming frowned and chuckled, replying, "Yeah, Bailan, I'm here to save you, don't be afraid." That sentence was like pouring a bowl of water into a boiling pot of oil. Bailan immediately struggled and shouted with all her might, "Run! You idiot! What are you doing here? Don't you know how to call the police? She asked you to come, so you came. Run! Run back immediately." Chapter 1640. A low growl was heard. It was a man's voice. Zhang Jinqing. Bailan panicked and shouted anxiously, "I'm fine, Bailan, don't worry. I'm fine." Zhang Jinqing's voice was extremely weak. When they kidnapped Bailan, he had fought with them with all his might. Although he was a member of the basketball team and had a better physique than them, a fierce tiger could not fight against a pack of wolves. How could two fists fight against four hands? Moreover, there were more than 10 of them and they were all armed. By the time he defeated 3 or 4 of them, he was already riddled with injuries. In the end, all he could do was protect Bailan with all his might and try his best not to let her get hurt. Just now, he had used up the last of his energy to turn their bodies to the back of Bailan, while his calf was hit hard by that woman. The bones in his calf were probably broken. Basketball he might not be able to play in the future. But the moment the pain spread throughout his entire body, the first thought that came to his mind was, luckily she was not the one in pain. You're really a Casanova. The woman laughed sarcastically. Zhang Jinqing spat out the blood in his mouth and said, "Maybe I stayed with Snake for too long and didn't learn basketball skills. I learned some infatuation. I'm not a Casanova, but as long as I, Zhang Jinqing, am still breathing, I will not let you hurt a single hair on Bailan." The woman paused when she heard Snake's name. Then she gritted her teeth and turned to look at Gu Mingming. Her gaze was colder than a poisonous scorpion's. "The person in Snake's heart, since he dotes on you so much, why did he let you come here alone? I think you're just SOSO. As the woman spoke, she walked towards Gu Mingming. She dragged the wooden stick on the ground and made a slight scraping sound. Gu Mingming did not waste her 5 years in the beast world. Her background might not be as good as the orcs, but against the modern people, even a boxing champion might not have much chance of winning against her. After all, her sparring partners in the beast world were all ferocious beasts who were kings of the mountains. However, before they started fighting, Gu Mingming felt that there was a need to clarify some questions, so she retracted her gaze from Bailan and looked at the woman approaching her. She asked calmly, "But, who are you?" The woman paused and stared at Gu Mingming in disbelief. She realized that Gu Mingming had a blank and calm look on her face and it was obvious that she really did not know her. Who am I? You ruined my family and now you're asking me who I am? What could be more cruel than someone who was so jealous that they almost became a demon, but the other party didn't even remember who you were? Me. Gu Mingming pointed at her own nose, feeling wronged. Chapter 1641. Gu Mingming caught the wooden stick and slung it over her shoulder. As she smiled sideways, the woman fell to the ground like a dog eating **T. Gu Mingming even gave her a person with a wicked sense of humor. "Bam! The woman screamed. She covered her wound with one hand and curled up on the ground, not daring to move. Yes, her wrist holding the wooden stick was crushed by Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming really did not do it on purpose. She just wanted to snatch the wooden stick from her hand, but, she did not control her strength properly. This was an accident, really an accident. But even though it was an accident, Gu Mingming did not feel apologetic. She had beaten up Bailan and Zhang Jinqing so badly. Even if she killed her now, it would not be enough to appease her hatred. What more breaking a wrist? After fiddling with the wooden stick for a while, Gu Mingming felt bored and directly threw it out of the windowsill. A wave of scolding came from downstairs. Gu Mingming thought, she might have hit the one on the lookout downstairs. This was just a coincidence, really. Even if she had aimed, she would not have been able to throw it so accurately. Gu Mingming smiled awkwardly. Then she walked towards Bai Lan and Zhan Jinqing, wanting to undo the metal chains binding them. Bai Lan was so shocked by Gu Mingming's move that she could not speak for a long time. When she saw that crazy woman pouncing towards Gu Mingming, her heart almost jumped out of her throat. But seeing how Gu Mingming easily neutralized the woman's attack and flipped her over in the blink of an eye, Bai Lan finally heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Gu Mingming, who was walking towards her, and said, "You're really good. You hid your strength well." "Even I was fooled." Gu Mingming smiled without saying a word. How was she going to explain? Say that she had transmigrated to another world and lived with werewolves, foxes and snakes for a few years, so her skills improved by leaps and bounds, comparable to Tarzan of the Apes? As long as Bai Lan was not crazy, she would not believe it. Gu Mingming had just touched the metal chains when a ruffian's voice sounded from behind her. Gu Mingming turned back. The scene was rather unbearable. The woman whose wrist was crushed by Gu Mingming was dragged behind a barrel of gasoline to perform some indescribable acts. The man would pinch her injured wrist from time to time and become even more excited as he listened to her miserable cries. The man who called out to Gu Mingming seemed to be used to it. But when he saw Gu Mingming's gaze, he scolded in a joking manner. "Tisk, can't you wait till you are done with your business before getting high? You can't even hold it in for a while, trash." "Brother Meng, it's time for him to eat," so he added some food. "Don't bother about them, let's get down to business." A lackey came forward and whispered into Brother Meng's ear. "Is it time for dinner?" "It's only 5 o'clock. What time for dinner?" Gu Mingming was stunned for a moment. Then she saw the strange expression on the man's face and understood. He was a drug addict. Brother Meng seemed to have expected this to happen. He ignored the lackeys and directly said to Gu Mingming, "Girl, we just want money, not lives. We have no intention of meddling in the grievances between you and that slut. We just want to make friends with you and borrow some money to spend." An old line of blackmail. TSK, what era was this? Korean dramas were already about amnesia, car accidents and leukemia. Yet they still wanted to make friends and borrow some money? Not even changing their tactics. Chapter 1642. Once Gu Mingming said that, Brother Meng started laughing. His laugh was rather wretched, as if he was laughing at Gu Mingming's innocence and ignorance. "What can I do? Your brother, still want to be friends with you." As Brother Meng said, he walked towards Gu Mingming. His face was clearly shriveled up, obviously influenced by the person beside him who was having a meal and had some lewd thoughts. Whether she could defeat this Brother Meng was one thing, but to fight against him was another. Gu Mingming was especially aware of how sensitive the noses of the few people in her family were. If she was stained with the scent of another man, they could destroy the earth. So Gu Mingming smiled awkwardly and said, "I really can't stop you if you want to die." With that, Gu Mingming punched her own collarbone hard, then grabbed her chest and twisted her ear. Brother Meng looked at Gu Mingming and thought that she was crazy, so he was stunned for a moment. But before he could react, a white light suddenly flashed beside Gu Mingming and 3 ferocious beasts appeared. A huge black wolf opened its mouth wide and bared its fangs at them. Its green eyes were filled with bloodlust and cruelty. A snake as thick as a train's skin crushed the ground of the villa and broke through the roof. Its huge body circled around the villa and all of them were trapped by the snake's body. Snake scales glowed faintly in green light all around them and the sound of friction made one's hair stand on end. The few men were so scared that they fell to the ground. The more timid ones peed their pants on the spot. And that innocent little person was nestled in the tail of a white and fluffy fox. She looked like a soul-seducing dodgy, smiling like a flower as she watched Baigan's heart being gouged out. "See, I told you. My man doesn't like me to be friends with other men. You just had to throw yourself at him. It won't be easy even if Yuan wants to spare your life." Gu Mingming stood up from Li's arms and patted his back. "Help me put them down first, then use the fox seductive fragrance to make them forget what they saw today." Leah nodded. Then he waved his large tail and transformed into a human in front of everyone, leaving only one hand that looked like a fox's claw. With a wave, the metal chains were cut apart like tofu skin that could not withstand a single blow. Leah quickly untied the ropes on Bai Lan and Zhan Jinqing, then followed Gu Mingming's instructions and used the fox seductive fragrance to hypnotize them. Seeing that Leah had transformed into a human, Brother Meng was the first to react. He ran backwards in fear. "Mother! Monster!" Gu Mingming turned back and looked at the person who was still swaggering around. She chuckled and said, "Demon? You knew they were monsters yet you still shouted? If you shout so loudly, do you think you can run away?" Brother Meng was as cowardly as a dog. Chapter 1643. Leah did not do anything else in Europe for the past week, just researching on medical skills. He knew that he had to wait for Gu Mingming to find him or call him over, but if he did nothing and just waited, he would go crazy, so he shifted all his attention to his studies. He did not allow himself to have a moment of leisure, which resulted in the results of his 7 days of study being very obvious. Coupled with his own medical foundation, he quickly diagnosed Zhang Jincheng's injuries. It's not convenient for me to check on that little female, but this male, his leg is broken, 4 of his ribs are broken, his head is obviously injured, there are 27 external injuries on his body and 19 bruises. Using your words here, it's called a body with cuts and bruises all over, right? Gu Mingming chuckled. Good, very good. Gu Mingming waved at Elvis, calling him to her side. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck gently. You don't have to do anything to these trash, even biting them to death would dirty your mouth. Yes. Great aunt, you're really right. Brother Ming had long been scared out of his wits by Elvis's green eyes. The pressure from staring at a ferocious beast was really not something to joke about. Gu Mingming pointed at the few people lying on the ground. The few of you, listen up. Out of everyone here, I will only allow 1 person to leave alive. You guys, do as you see fit. Upon hearing that, the gangsters only took 2 to 3 seconds to react. They then immediately picked up their weapons and attacked the people around them. This was human. In front of a strong enemy, they would never unite as one. They did not even dare to attack Elvis, Snake and the rest. They immediately brandished their weapons and attacked their equally weak companions. Gu Mingming laughed coldly. She had respect for human lives, but survival of the fittest, the winner gets to eat alone. She was no longer the Gu Mingming who had just arrived in the beast world, who would value life regardless of right or wrong. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll eliminate them completely. The gangsters, who were in a frenzy of killing, each attack was more ruthless than the previous one. After about 20 minutes, the scene where there were more than 10 people just now had turned into a bloody mess. He looked at Gu Mingming and said, I survived, can I go now? Gu Mingming recognized him. He was the lackey who had been following Brother Meng just now. He seemed to have a good relationship with Brother Meng, so Brother Meng trusted him very much. When the fight started, he even stuck his back to him, planning to work together to save his life. But Brother Meng definitely didn't expect that the first blow that landed on his head was from his lackey. Gu Mingming nodded and made a pleased gesture. The lackey took 2 steps back and stopped beside Snake's body. He turned around and looked at Gu Mingming with a face full of blood. Gu Mingming smiled. Snake. Snake transformed into a human lazily and walked to Gu Mingming's side. He wiped her little face and said, That's it? You've called out the 3 beast kings, but you won't let us take action? Gu Mingming smiled and said, They are too dirty, I can't bear to dirty your hands. Elvis also transformed into a human and carried her up from the ground. I felt the pain from the mark and thought something had happened to you. Whoever dares to bully you will be challenging the dignity of the F country's royal family and destroying the diplomatic relations between the 2 countries. Gu Mingming said, What if they tell others that they saw you guys transform? Snake's eyes flashed and he laughed. If this gets out, people will only think that they overdosed on drugs and hallucinated, right? Tell me, if you were a police officer, would you believe the crazy words of a kidnapper and drug addict? Chapter 1645. To be honest, as a modern local, Gu Mingming was not as knowledgeable as an outsider like Snake. Or rather, Gu Mingming was a commoner living at the bottom of society. Even if she was as scheming as Snake, she would not be able to produce such a huge box of US dollars as evidence. She would also not be able to use the word diplomatic relations to force the government to settle this matter according to their wishes. All the hooligans would not be able to escape from forced detoxification and jail time. But Gu Mingming's gaze landed on the woman who was curled up behind the barrel of gasoline. Her body was covered in bruises and her clothes could not cover her body. Her messy hair and bloodstains at the corner of her lips were all signs of what she had just experienced. The wrist that was crushed by Gu Mingming was dangling at a weird angle on her knee. Her pupils were dilated and it was obvious that she was frightened by the scene just now. Come to think of it, if it was anyone else they would also be frightened. Didn't Gu Mingming faint on the spot the first time she saw Snake's original body? As for this woman, she had seen the main bodies of all 3 orcs at once without any warning. She was already very courageous to just stand there blankly and not die on the spot. You don't remember her? Snake followed Gu Mingming's gaze and asked. Gu Mingming did not answer Snake's question. Instead, she turned to look at Snake and asked in confusion, "Should I know her?" Snake chuckled and said, "You must not have been paying attention when you were watching television with Wang Xiaoxin." Gu Mingming's face was wooden and she did not reply. Snake said, "During the gathering after the press conference, the one who locked you in the toilet and splashed a basin of water on you." Yes, Snake had completely forgotten about the incident where Gu Mingming straddled her and slapped her. He only remembered that this woman bullied his Tumeng. Now that Snake mentioned it, Gu Mingming remembered that it had indeed happened. "But, she was the one who provoked me first. I only slapped her a few times. Did she have to kidnap Bai Lan to kill me?" Gu Mingming was confused. Snake took out his cell phone from his pocket and opened a few popular news websites. He searched for news related to the MO group, and passed it to Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming swiped her cell phone twice and her facial features turned on the emoji pack mode. She grimaced as she read a few of the headlines, then looked at Snake and asked, "These were made by you?" Snake shook his head, determined not to take the blame. "It's not me, it's the assistant who did it. But the result is still satisfactory. This assistant can be promoted, get a raise and get a good car." Gu Mingming rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. How should I put it? It wasn't that she was a saint, but at the end of the day, this young lady of the MO family was just a little arrogant and willful. She had poured a basin of water over her head, that was all. Moreover, she immediately fought back. Strictly speaking, she really did not suffer any losses. It was indeed wrong of Mo Fun to capture Bai Lan and Zhang Jincheng and beat them up, but it was also because of Snake's ruthlessness. No one could say who was right and who was wrong. It was a complete mess. Could it be that after following Meng Meng as a beast god for a few years, you've really become a god who loves the world and is compassionate? Snake paused for a moment and suddenly smiled. The corners of his lips curled upwards as he said, "You bullied my Tumeng. Do you want to die? How can it be that cheap?" Elvis did not understand and just frowned at the two sinister people in front of him. After a moment of silence, he said, "You two are in charge of coming up with ideas, I am only in charge of executing." Snake looked at Elvis and said, "You don't have to do anything, that little assistant of mine is quite capable." Chapter 1647. When the police arrived, they saw the floor littered with hooligans on their last breaths, Mo Fun who was in a state of rags, Gu Mingming who was safe and sound in Snake's arms, and the bodyguard Gregory who was sent by the F Kingdom's prince to protect the future princess, who had been exposed in various media reports in the early morning. Bai Lan and Zhang Jincheng were escorted by Elvis and Leah to the hospital, where there were people arranged by Snake to receive them. Actually, it was not a big problem even without Elvis and Leah, but they were summoned by Gu Mingming using the mating mark and did not have any records of entering the country. It would be troublesome if they appeared suddenly, so they accompanied Bai Lan and Zhang Jincheng to the hospital. Gu Mingming followed the script that Snake had arranged and explained it to the police. The police were all scared out of their wits. However, Gu Mingming changed Mo Fun's part slightly. From the kidnapper to the helper. She said that Mo Fun was bullied by the hooligans because he wanted to protect her, and if not for Mo Fun, she would have been the one being bullied. So in the end, Mo Fun was not brought away by the police, but was sent back to the Mo family by Snake's men. And the only lackey who left the unfinished building alive, became the wanted target of the police, and was identified as the mastermind of this kidnapping. He was the scapegoat, but he could not shake off this blame. Because he had indeed participated in the kidnapping, and it was not the first time he had killed someone, so it was not wrong for him to be wanted. And the video of Mo Fun kidnapping Bai Lan and Zhang Jincheng was also sent back to the Mo family. These videos were all taken down by Snake, and other than Snake, the police did not have a single one in their hands. Only Gu Mingming and Snake's confession could be used as evidence. There was no choice because the words of those hooligans after they woke up could not be trusted. What giant wild wolf, Snake as thick as a trained skin, Tiske, their brains were really full of holes from all the drugs they drank. None of them were normal. In the end, they were all sent to the drug rehabilitation center for forced detoxification. An old master Mo did not even wait for the next day. That very night, he led a group of men and women from the Mo family to the villa Gu Mingming was staying in. Snake did not seem to be surprised at all. He just sat on the main seat of the sofa like a king, playing with Gu Mingming's fingers out of boredom, leaving the entire Mo family standing in front of him at a loss of what to do. With a plop, old Master Mo's body bent and he directly knelt on the ground saying, "Since you're willing to bury that vile spawn's deeds and protect her by sending her back to the Mo clan, it's clear that you don't really intend to exterminate the Mo clan." As long as you can leave a way out for our family no matter what you want to do, we won't say anything. Gu Mingming felt extremely uncomfortable being kneeled by someone who could be her grandfather. She wanted to help Grandfather Emo up, but Snake held her waist and whispered into her ear, "In front of me he doesn't have the right to flaunt his seniority. You're my woman. You have a very high status." Gu Mingming kept quiet. Snake should be 2,000 years old by now. In front of him, old Master Emo, who was over 70 years old, could be called a little fresh meat. But this little fresh meat had the face of an old man. Gu Mingming still felt uncomfortable. Chapter 1648. The Emo Family? The Emo family was now in a terrible mess, riddled with holes. Snakel said he wanted something that others might not even want even if they offered it to others? Was it clear that he was willing to let the Emo family off? Elder Emo was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly got his family members to help him up from the ground. Only when Elder Emo stood up did the rest of the Emo family dare to stand up as well. Elder Emo sat on the sofa. His 70 years of life had given him a wealth of experience. Even though he could not see through the thoughts of this man in front of him, he could tell that he doted on and accommodated that young girl. So the Emo family could be revived and receive this amnesty was probably because that young girl was magnanimous and was willing to let the Emo family off this once. Without saying anything else, Elder Emo smiled at Gu Mingming and nodded. It was a small action, but it was obvious how much gratitude he was showing. Snakel did not like other men to size up Gu Mingming, even if they were like a withered old cucumber. She was only 70 years old and this kind of fresh meat was very dangerous. He had to guard her with all his might. Who knew what was wrong with Gu Mingming that she would suddenly like ugly and wrinkled men? Frowning, Snakel glared at Elder Emo and said, "Since you have sat down, does that mean you agree to my purchase of the Emo family?" "Agree, of course I agree." Elder Emo did not dare to object. "Then is there anything else?" Snakel was obviously asking them to leave. Elder Emo was taken aback. This verbal agreement was enough? Would Snakel suddenly change his mind tomorrow and not want the Emo family anymore? This young man, he always did whatever he wanted. What kind of person was Snakel? Elder Mo's thoughts were as clear to him as the monk's scar on his head. As long as one was not blind, he would be able to see it clearly. "My assistant will bring a team of lawyers to the Emo family tomorrow to negotiate," Snakel said calmly. Elder Emo then relaxed and smiled apologetically. "Since that's the case, we shall not disturb you any further. Goodbye, goodbye." Snakel gestured for them to leave but did not even have the intention to stand up. After the Emo family left the villa, Snake didn't let go of Gu Mingming and just carried her upstairs. As he went upstairs, he sent a message to his assistant. 2 sentences, "Take over the Emo group tomorrow morning," and "First floor of the villa, new sofa set." Yes, how could he let his Tuming sit on a sofa that another man had sat on? Gu Mingming's room was in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. Snake had predicted from the start that Gu Mingming would not agree to stay in his room when she moved in, so he just emptied the master bedroom and stayed in the 2nd bedroom. However, anyway he would not stay for long. After all, he had planned to stay in Gu Mingming's room from the start. Now that they had become partners, it was even more justifiable for him to avoid it. He naturally carried Gu Mingming back to the main nest. His eyebrows twitched. Initially, when he designed such a spacious master bedroom, it was not to accommodate so many people. Leah laid sideways on the side of the king-size bed. He swayed his tail seductively and smiled at Gu Mingming with a beauty that could cause the downfall of nations and people. He opened his mouth and said, "Mingming, this bed has your scent, it smells so good." Gu Mingming blushed strangely. It was just a normal sentence, why did Leah make it sound so ambiguous? Aside from the topic. Especially after losing her, he would never forget the feeling of falling from the warm sun into an ice cave. At that time, every tear she shed and every heartless word she said was a warning to him for the rest of his life. He would never let her suffer again. That was his promise to himself. Elvis scooped Gu Mingming out from Lee's arms and chuckled. "I am the first partner. With me around, when was it your turn to hug Xiaomeng?" Aside from the topic. Chapter 1650. Leah rolled his eyes at Elvis in a tsundra manner and snorted. Without saying anything else, he rolled around on the bed and hugged Gu Mingming's pillow to take a deep breath. Then he looked at Gu Mingming with a dubious smile. Elvis placed Gu Mingming on the chair beside the dressing table and looked at her reflection in the mirror. "I saw it in Europe, do you like it?" Gu Mingming tilted her head and saw a European bronze wooden comb in Snake's hands. She smiled and asked, "Why did you think of giving me a wooden comb?" Elvis said, When we went to Sauder to participate in the beauty pageant the first year, you said you wanted a rhinoceros horn comb. It's a pity you didn't even make one after breaking off so many beast horns from Oriton. If Elvis had not mentioned this, Gu Mingming would have long forgotten about it. But looking at Elvis's expression, it was obvious that he had kept it in his heart and felt that he had disappointed Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming smiled and took the comb from Elvis. It's very pretty. I like it very much. Thank you. Let me help you comb your hair? Elvis's gaze was gentle. Gu Mingming nodded and sat down obediently. Snake leaned against the door and watched Elvis comb Gu Mingming's hair. He asked with a faint smile, "Did you buy this comb? Do you have money?" Gu Mingming clearly felt Elvis pause in his combing action. He suddenly looked up at Snake and then back at Gu Mingming. His face was filled with confusion. Gu Mingming's heart skipped a beat. But, Elvis, don't tell me you took it from someone else without paying? That's right, how could there be a concept of buying and selling in the beast world? If I like it, I will just snatch it. If you are not happy, you can snatch it back. Elvis shook his head and said, the money was paid by someone else. Someone else? Gu Mingming caught onto an important point and asked in confusion. Elvis nodded and said, there was a male who had a lot of these combs. I challenged him and said that if I won, he would give me this comb, but he rejected. And then? Gu Mingming's heart was in her throat. How could a modern man withstand a beating from a beast king like Elvis? It would be troublesome if someone died because of a comb. Elvis said, then another male walked over and said that if I fought with his men regardless of the outcome, he would give me this comb. I agreed. Gu Mingming's face was filled with confusion. There were still such warmongers in the modern world? Fight me and I'll give you a wooden comb? What kind of godly development was this? But Snake just smiled, looking as if he knew it all too well. He asked, lost or won? Elvis frowned and said, the males in this world can't take a beating. Gu Mingming stood up immediately and grabbed onto Elvis's arm with both her hands, asking, hubby, did you beat someone to death? Elvis shook his head and said, he didn't die, he just broke an arm. Did you show your original form? Gu Mingming asked. Elvis shook his head and said, he punched me, so I grabbed his wrist and wanted to throw him out. The moment I threw him, his arm broke. I don't know either, he looked quite strong, but why are his bones so soft? One pull and it broke. Chapter 1651. It was normal for males to break an arm or a leg during a fight, so Elvis did not take it to heart at first. But after Leah found out about it, he told him that the rules of this world were different from the beast world, and that he might bring trouble to Gu Ming by beating people up like that. Just like what Leah said, this was the world that Gu Mingming was familiar with. She lived more comfortably here, so he and Leah hoped that she could stay here as she pleased, and not be forced to end this illusion because of them. Gu Mingming turned back to look at Snake, asking, "Ah, Kel?" Snake chuckled and rubbed Gu Mingming's head, saying, "It's alright, didn't he just fight a boxing match in the black market? It's common for people to be beaten to death in this kind of underground competition, so no one would pursue it. Moreover, F country is my territory. As long as he doesn't beat the president to death in public, I can settle everything else." Gu Mingming sweated. So, what Snake meant was that it was not that the president could not be beaten to death as long as it was not in public. Snake looked at Gu Mingming's darkened face and could not help but smile, saying, alright, even if he beats the president to death in public, I will definitely protect him. Is that alright? Don't worry. Gu Mingming roared in her heart, you are making me even more worried, alright? No normal person would beat the president to death, alright? If you support them like this, aren't you afraid that Elvis will be even more unbridled in the future? Xiaoming, don't worry. In the future, I won't beat people up so easily. Elvis coaxed Gu Mingming. I'm afraid that's not up to you. Snake walked to Gu Mingming with a faint smile, and placed his phone on top of Gu Mingming's makeup box. The phone was playing a video, and the scene was of an underground boxing match. Although his face was blurred out, Gu Mingming could recognize that one of the two people on the stage was Elvis. Gu Mingming was confused. Snakel smiled as he kept his phone and said, the one whose arm was broken by Elvis is the most popular boxing champion in the past 2 years. People call him Boss Black Boxing. Countless boxers have died in his hands. But today his right arm was crippled by a light toss from Elvis. But the boss behind the scenes is not a righteous person. He has no intention of seeking justice for the Black Fist boss. Instead, he offered a huge reward to find out Elvis's whereabouts. It is obvious that he wants to groom him well. Gu Mingming shook her head and said, No, I don't want Elvis to be associated with this kind of person. Snake rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, Alright, then I will suppress this news and guarantee that Elvis will not find this person on their information channels. Wait. Elvis frowned as he took Snake's phone and swiped it twice. Chapter 1652. The boss of the black boxing boss took out an extremely exquisite comb. It was said to be one of the dowries of the first queen of F country. It was inlaid with the world's most perfect ruby, the blazing sun. It was said that this comb could make the woman who owned it extremely blissful. Gu Mingming chuckled. A comb could make someone extremely blissful? Why don't you say that the ruby on it is from De Beers Kimberley? A ruby is everlasting, one will be passed down forever. Xiaomeng. Elvis looked serious. Yes, he had obviously eaten this Amway. No. Gu Mingming put on a straight face and said, I only need one wooden comb. I don't have the hobby of collecting combs. Moreover, I only have one head and this much hair. How many combs can I use? Hubby, listen to me. This person is obviously lying to you. If you go for this comb this time, he will use some other gimmick comb to entice you to fight again. Fight after fight, it will never end. Elvis pursed his lips. If it could make Xiaomeng happier, it was really nothing to fight. Hubby, you are different from the people here. If you expose yourself too many times, you will definitely attract attention. What if your identity is exposed? I won't. Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's little face. He coaxed and begged, I promise I won't let anyone discover my identity. I still want to stay here and accompany you to live the life you like. But Xiaomeng, I am a male. I can't hide at home forever and wait for others to provide for me. I have to have my own ability to protect you. Gu Mingming choked and could not say a word. Snake had worked hard here for 19 years. With the noble bloodline of the royal family, his social status and wealth naturally went without saying. When Leah was in the beast world, he had already learned many years of medical skills through television. He was naturally intelligent and exceptionally gifted in medical skills. She believed that it would not take long for him to achieve outstanding achievements in the medical field. While Elvis, as the first partner in the family, did not have his own career. She had neglected a man's pride. Be it in the beast world or the modern world, living off a woman was a disgrace to a man. But Gu Mingming still felt uneasy. Fighting in an underground fight sounded dangerous no matter how she heard it. Elvis smiled and said, I have the power of a beast king. No one in this world can hurt me. Snake placed his hand on Gu Mingming's shoulder lightly and said, with the royal family protecting him, no one would dare to make things difficult for him. Leah also swayed his large tail and sat by the bed. He smiled at Gu Mingming in the mirror and said, if I really meet a strong opponent one day and get my arms or legs broken, then I can use them for clinical trials. That's pretty good. Alright, the three of them were on the same team. Gu Mingming looked at Gregory, who had not said a word. Chapter 1653. Girl? The moment the door to the ward opened, Bailan saw Gu Mingming. She immediately threw away the apple she was chewing halfway and opened her arms, waiting for Gu Mingming to deliver herself to her. Snake was unwilling but had no choice. He could only let go of Gu Mingming and watch as Gu Mingming threw herself into someone else's arms. How are you? Does it still hurt? Gu Mingming hugged Bailan, then pulled a pillow over for her to lean on. Bailan laughed heartlessly and said, I'm fine, but he, glancing sideways at Zhan Jinqing, Bailan blushed and said, he agreed to my proposal. 2 years later, he will have a graduation certificate on his left hand and a marriage certificate on the right. After taking off his academic robes, he will directly wear a wedding dress. What? Gu Mingming was dumbfounded and completely out of it. Bailan chuckled and said, sorry girl, I might have to abandon you. This man is too stupid. If I don't keep a close eye on him, he will be snatched away by others. So, can you understand me? Mm? Gu Mingming burst out laughing and said, you are really too much. You are the one proposing? Why don't you let him do it? Bailan glanced at Zhan Jinqing's knees and said, in this lifetime, I will never let him be afraid of his knees touching the ground again. Gu Mingming did not understand and turned to look at Snake. Snake said, when those people kidnapped them yesterday, Zhan Jinqing knelt on the ground and used his body to protect Bailan. After that, Emofen waved the rod in front of you and broke Zhan Jinqing's calf bone. I have already contacted the best doctor and he will be able to walk normally in the future. But when it rains, it will definitely hurt. Gu Mingming lowered her eyes and held Bailan's hand, saying, Bailan, I'm sorry, it's all because of me that you guys have been implicated. Silly girl, what are you saying? Bailan pinched Gu Mingming. If it wasn't for you, I would never have believed that someone would risk her life for me and not abandon me even under such circumstances. I've been strong for 19 years and this is the first time I've been protected. Girl, if what Emofen did is related to you then I should thank you. If it wasn't for this, I might have missed out on the only idiot in my life who values me more than her own life. But Gu Mingming looked at Bailan and Zhang Jincheng's white bandages and felt guilty. Bailan raised her arm and smiled. You're talking about this? Come on, you're so pretentious. I have a bad temper and I spend more time in the hospital than in the dormitory. This injury is nothing. Gu Mingming was speechless. That year, when Bailan was beaten up to the point of asking for her salary, she had said the same thing to her. Gu Mingming tugged at Bailan's hand. Since you have decided to get married, you cannot be so hot-tempered in the future. You have to think about your man too, don't you? Without you, what will he do? Bailan glanced at Zhang Jincheng, smiled and said, I understand. Zhang Jincheng, who had remained silent from the start, frowned at Bailan's smile. Bailan, your proposal does not count. Chapter 1654. Gu Mingming was really at a loss. Were these two really going to get married? Why did she feel like Bailan was going to snatch an innocent man? Zhang Jincheng was not annoyed. He waited for Bailan to finish yelling before narrowing his eyes. Bailan, you're sitting on my wound. It's a little painful. Ah? Bailan was shocked. She immediately stood up from Zhang Jincheng's body and glared down at him. Pain? What pain? You're going to break off the marriage and leave me. Why would I care if it hurts? Although she said that, she did not sit back down. Her careful look was clearly because she was afraid of touching Zhang Jincheng's wound again. Zhang Jincheng seemed to be used to her tough mouth but soft heart. He didn't mind that she was standing high up on his bed and looking down at him. He was willing to look up at her. When I recover, I'll still be the one to propose. Zhang Jincheng said gently. I told you before, I don't have much more than others. But what other women have I, Zhang Jincheng's wife, cannot lack. Marriage only happens once in a lifetime. You have to make me beg you to marry me. Only then will you have enough confidence to put on airs when you come to my house. If someone in my family makes things difficult for you when I'm not at home, then you can confidently yell, it was your Zhang Jincheng who shamelessly begged me to marry him. Only then will you be unyielding and won't be bullied, understand? Bailan's anger instantly subsided. She cleared her throat and jumped down from Zhang Jincheng's bed. Then, she quietly sat back on the bed and covered herself with the blankets. With a demure expression she said, if you want to beg, just do it. Why are you so fierce? Gu Mingming burst out laughing. Zhang Jincheng fierce? From the beginning to the end, the other party had been speaking softly and softly, while Bailan, on the other hand, was like a female bandit, straddling him like she was going to beat him up. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been fierce to you. Zhang Jincheng apologized without any principles. Gu Mingming was shocked. In the beast world, it was normal for males to compromise like this. But this was the modern world. Other than saying, I can't do anything if you think that way, and the all-purpose golden phrase, drink more hot water, guys could actually do such things. Oh. Gu Mingming clutched her forehead and looked at Snake, who had knocked her on the head, her eyes filled with accusation. Snake clenched his teeth and scooped Gu Mingming up. The visit is over. Let's go back to school. Ha! Gu Mingming protested. Didn't you say that with you around, no one would dare to record me for skipping class? I still have to accompany Bailan. What's there to accompany? Does she need you to accompany her? You big third wheel. Snake carried Gu Mingming away without giving her a chance to explain. Gu Mingming thought about it. Snake was right, he really did not need her to accompany him now. After leaving the hospital, Snake shoved Gu Mingming into the car. He did not start the car, but stared at Gu Mingming with a dark face, as if he wanted to stare 2 holes into her face. What's wrong? Gu Mingming felt guilty for no reason. Are you regretting it? Snake narrowed his eyes. Danger filled the entire carriage. What? Gu Mingming was dumbfounded. Snake said, if I hadn't snatched your love letter back then, Zhang Jincheng would be your boyfriend now, right? Seeing how considerate he is towards Bailan, you regret letting him off, right? Gu Mingming held her forehead. The sorrow in her heart flowed like a river. Then 2 months later, Gu Mingming received a call from Zhang Jincheng out of the blue. Without saying anything, he shamelessly begged her to keep Bailan in the dormitory for the next 3 days and not let her go out. Then at 8 p.m. he had to bring her to the basketball court. Gu Mingming frowned, realizing that things were not so simple. After experiencing so many things in the beast world, Zhang Jincheng's thoughts were really too obvious. So if Zhang Jinqing needs your help, Akel, don't shirk away. Try your best to help him, okay? Snake smiled and said, if the person he proposes to is Bailan, no one in this world would want him to succeed more than the four of us. So don't worry, we will grant your request. This matter was settled. Chapter 1657. Oh, your snake is suddenly so easygoing today? They actually let you out to accompany me? Bailan looked at Gu Mingming, who had suddenly asked her out to go shopping. She smiled playfully. Why? Have your two icebergs finally collided and merged into one? Gu Mingming blushed. She now seriously felt that it was Bailan who had led her astray when she had first arrived in the beast world. She pinched Bailan's waist and said, Snake is the real CEO of Monster Company after all, doesn't he have to work every day? Bailan, however, did not believe it. She took a sip of her hazelnut frappuccino and said, this semester, ever since the two of you started dating in a high-profile manner, when have you ever seen him neglect you because of work? The person who wants to tie you to his belt every day suddenly gives you freedom. Diske, there must be a reason for this abnormality. Although I don't like him, from an objective point of view, he's still a good boyfriend. Silly girl, you have to be more vigilant. Don't let others take advantage of you. If that happens, you won't even have a place to cry. Gu Mingming was really speechless. Snake and the rest were busy helping Zhang Jinqing arrange for his marriage proposal, but the one being proposed to was actually suspecting him of cheating. Gu Mingming could not betray Zhang Jinqing, so she could only laugh dryly. What are you afraid of, have you forgotten? Snake has already transferred the Monster Company to me. I am now a true rich lady in S City. Bailan chuckled and said, all right, then my dream has come true. Gu Mingming tilted her head and smiled. What dream? Bailan, one day when our girl becomes a rich woman, she'll come back and support me. Gu Mingming laughed heartily and hugged Bailan's shoulders. All right, your dream has come true. Today I'll take care of you for a day. I'll bring you out to eat and buy, how about that? Bailan pretended to be bashful as she leaned against Gu Mingming's shoulder, pinching her throat as she said, all right. The two of them immediately had goosebumps. They rubbed their shoulders, smiled, and walked into the mall arm in arm. They really began to buy all kinds of things. If it was in the past, Gu Mingming might not have been able to swipe Snake's card like that. But now, although they were not protected by modern marriage laws, but a man who could die twice for her. He was willing to give his life to her, how could he not be willing to spend money? Moreover, it was just an illusion. Why not to satisfy herself and Bailan? From skincare products to clothes, shoes, hats and handbags, Gu Mingming and Bailan only stopped when they could no longer carry everything. Meanwhile, at the other end of the basketball court, Snake's face brightened up as the spending records kept appearing on his phone. Gushin. Ahead to go. Gugu. Down. 1. 5. Bailan and 2. Looking at the things she and Bailan were carrying, Gu Mingming pretended to be tired and said, there are too many things, we can't carry them all. Bye-bye, Lan. King bye. Bailan nodded in deep agreement. 1. But. 1. But I. But. Yes, but I bought too many things so I can't carry them all. Can you come and pick us up? Snake nudged Gu Mingming inside and said, be good, wait a while. Gu Mingming felt that it was strange, but her heart was thumping non-stop. Vaguely, Gu Mingming seemed to understand something. Snake. Gu Mingming sounded like she was about to cry as she called out Snake's name. Snake slowly released Gu Mingming's eyes. At the same time, with a click of the switch, the entire basketball court was brightly lit as if it was daytime. The words, Gu Mingming, I love you, were written on the balloon castle. Snake bit Gu Mingming's ear lightly and said, silly girl, do you really not know how much your males love you? Gu Mingming looked at the three of them standing at the side in confusion. She then looked back at Snake's face. Snake kissed her on the lips and said, your men will never bear for you to suffer in any way. What he meant was that Elvis and the other two had agreed to Snake's actions today. Chapter 1660. You will experience such a scene 2 or 3 more times. But today you are mine. Snake used a voice that only the two of them could hear to whisper into Gu Mingming's ear, before kissing her deeply on the lips. After a round of hubbub, Gu Mingming pushed Snake with a blushing face, before turning to look at Bailan. Narrowing her eyes, she said, great, you are actually in cahoots with them? Bailan raised her hands in surrender, saying, I am a traitor, I am guilty. So what Zhan Jinqing proposing was all a ruse? Today I am not the one pestering you, you are the one pestering me? Gu Mingming was really speechless to think that she was so good at acting. How could she not see that she had been tricked by Bai Lan? Bai Lan laughed heartily, stretching out her left hand and shaking her fingers. Zhan Jinqing proposed to me last week in the hospital. Today, in order to lie to you, I didn't even dare to wear an engagement ring. Bai Lan. Your engagement is such a big event, how could you not call me? Gu Mingming pounced on Bai Lan relentlessly, not hitting her but just tickling her. Bai Lan was most ticklish, so she could only beg for mercy, saying, I was wrong, I was really wrong. Girl, forgive me, ha. I am doing this for my future husband's future. What future? Gu Mingming's hands stopped moving, looking at Bai Lan in confusion. Bai Lan held onto Zhan Jinqing's arm, leaning against his shoulder like a little bird, saying, Zhan Jinqing took over as the CEO of the MO Group 3 days ago, and now your fiancé Snake is my fiancé's boss. Sorry, for the sake of our family's future happiness, I can only shamelessly betray my friend for my own glory. You still dare to act so righteously. Gu Mingming said, but she was smiling. Of course I'm righteous. Bai Lan laughed. Just based on our relationship, I can act righteously in front of you for the rest of my life. Anyway, you can't bear to not acknowledge me. You win. Gu Mingming swung her arm in the end, before leaning back into Snake's arms. That night, the basketball stadium was very lively. Her close friends, men and women, were all drunk together. Later they said that they were so drunk that they saw a fox and a wolf jumping up and down in the basketball court, making a fool of themselves. A gigantic bird that he had never seen before was flying around the basketball court. There seemed to be a drunk girl on its back, singing at the top of her lungs. And the amazing thing was that even though they were out of tune, they could still sing together. After waking up, everyone showed great interest in this dream. The probability of everyone having the same dream was really not high, so everyone tried to go back and check the surveillance to see what exactly happened that night that caused them to have the same hallucination. Chapter 1661. Although the kidnapping incident was over and those hooligans who insisted that they saw demons were locked up in the mental hospital, there were always coincidences. For example, the scene that day was actually witnessed by a few homeless beggars. But their words did not carry much weight, and even if they said it, no one would believe them. But the hooligans' testimonies, the beggars' rumors, and the scene that the students thought they saw when they were drunk on the day of the engagement, combined together, it gradually formed an exaggerated version of the story that even Gu Mingming herself found ridiculous. In order not to expose any more flaws, they could only complete the school transfer procedures and follow Snake back to F Country. F Country was Snake's home ground, and he had a strong family background as his backing. As for academics, naturally no one dared to seriously calculate Gu Mingming's academic points. Therefore, this ordinary student from a third-rate university in S City had transformed into a top student from a famous brand university in F Country. Gu Mingming sat on the small boat drifting with the current and held her chin. Looking at the males surrounding her, she sighed softly. Although in this era Snake was Gu Mingming's legitimate fiancé, the beast world had its own rules. No matter how strong the other partners were, the position of the first partner could not be violated. So, outside of Snake's home, Gu Mingming would always sit in Elvis's arms. What's wrong? Elvis's gaze was always concerned about the little person in his arms. No matter how different this world was from the beast world, in his eyes, it was just the same mountains and rivers. Only the one in his arms was a thousand-faced beauty that he could not get enough of. Gu Mingming looked up at Elvis and did not say a word before lowering her head again. If you don't like this place, can we go to other countries to play? Anyway, the problem of their identities has already been resolved, we can go anywhere. The current Snake was no longer the cold Snake King with low EQ. In front of Gu Mingming, both his EQ and EQ were always online. Gu Mingming shook her head and still did not say a word. Leah laughed softly and transformed his large tail to sit beside Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming instinctively hugged his tail, but her eyes widened. She instinctively lowered her voice and said, "Are you crazy? We are outside. What if someone sees us? Take it back, take it back." Leah placed his hands on Gu Mingming's shoulders and squinted his long and narrow eyes. His faint smile had a unique charm to it as he whispered into Gu Mingming's ear, "How can I let you go when you're hugging me so tightly? Mingming, who says one thing and means another, is so cute." Gu Mingming looked down at her own hands. Sigh, what a good-for-nothing. This furry fetish was her Achilles heel, and she could not change it. She threw it into the bin with the ice cream and hung it on his body. He was the one who hugged her every day, so he didn't think too much about it. Seeing that she was in a bad mood, he didn't dare to speak casually, afraid that he would say something wrong and make her even more unhappy. Now that she opened her mouth, he finally understood that his Xiaomeng was jealous. Actually, he was quite happy. Because if she was jealous, it meant that she cared about him. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.